Good evening, and welcome to this, the March 28th meeting of the Livermore City Council. I now call the meeting to order. Let the roll show that all are present and accounted for except Councilmember Stephen Spadowski, who is excused tonight. We have a special treat tonight. We've got Troop 931 is going to be conducting our Pledge of Allegiance tonight. They're led by Tanya Everett, the Merit Badge Counselor, and we have Alex Benedict, Andrew Thompson, Connor Layton, Kyle Packard, Ryan Thompson, and Joey Sullivan will be conducting the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. So I'll ask if you'd please rise and for the pledge and ask the Scouts to conduct this. Thank you. Proper council chambers, they don't have to worry about the ceiling.
Suspension. Color guard advance. Color guard, prepare to post the colors. Audience salute. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Color guard. Ready, post. Color guard reform. Color guard dismissed. Audience keys.
And thank you, Troop 931. Greatly appreciate it. Very well done. And maybe someday, if we ever get out of this trailer, we'll be able to have ceilings where you don't have to worry about whacking the eagle's head on the ceiling. Okay, proclamations. This is April coming up is Community Service Recognition Month, and in fact, I believe it's April 23rd is going to be the Community Service Day. So there's going to be a whole bunch of different activities on that day. We're going to be some of the schools, and perhaps you can talk about that a little bit later. But I have a proclamation. The City of Livermore proclaiming Community Service Recognition Month, April 2016. And whereas Livermore has a strong tradition of community service and volunteering, and whereas Community Service Recognition Month is a time to celebrate the efforts of volunteers at the local, state, and national levels, and whereas Community Service Recognition Month highlights the difference that volunteers are making in our society, as well as the impact of their contributions toward those in need. Volunteers gain a greater understanding of how their actions affect the well-being of the public, and often find that the giving of themselves results in the feeling of a greater sense of purpose and social connectivity. Whereas in Livermore, volunteers are the true heart and soul of our community. Over the past year, the City of Livermore benefited from the efforts of over 1,600 volunteers who donated roughly 47,000 hours of cleaning up the arroyos and graffiti, providing painting and landscaping enhancements at Hageman Farm, assisting the police department and library services, and providing general clerical and community service. And whereas April 23rd, 2016 is Community Service Day, where the city will be partnering with various community organizations to coordinate projects around Livermore, such as cleaning the arroyos, graffiti abatement, and planting drought-tolerant landscape. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Livermore thanks all of the hardworking volunteers and encourages residents of Livermore to volunteer to help bring about a positive change in the lives of others and in our community. And I'd like to give this to Jeff Schaefer.
Mayor Marchand and City Council, once again, thank you for doing this. As you mentioned, it's been a great effort by the community, and this year we're really looking forward to it. We are off and running. I want you to know that last time we had 400 volunteers for this day, and we're already at 600 signups. So we're moving well forward. This year we've got a lot of organizations that are involved. And we're also out serving the community and the nonprofits. People can go to cityservetrivalley.org, and that is a place where individuals or groups can sign up. We're really interested in having groups this year. They can also dial 925-960-8020, which is the maintenance building. And yes, we are doing projects such as the Arroyo and all of those. We're also going to have at Carnegie Park this year, CityServe is going to be bringing in a number of nonprofit organizations in Livermore that will all be at Carnegie Park that day, where the community can come out and find out how they can serve not just April 23rd, not just April as a month, but how they can serve throughout the entire year to the community. So again, we really appreciate your support on this, and we look forward to coming back with some great results.
And Jeff, your maintenance services manager, is that?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. Maintenance services manager, because you got bumped, or maybe you just kept your level, but they changed your title. So, but you're doing great work. And could you give us the website and the phone number again, please?
Again, cityservetrivalley.org. That's where we're going through this year. And then also the number is 925-960-8020, and they can contact me, Jeff Schaefer, the maintenance manager.
Terrific. Great.
Okay, thank you again.
We had a city survey a couple of years ago, and 96% of the people thought that Livermore was a great place to live and raise a family. I don't know what's wrong with the other 4%, but they're just not paying attention. But I think one of the reasons for that is because what I think is an even more important statistic is that over 50% of the people that responded to that poll donate their time back to the community. Over 50% give the most precious thing they have, and that's their time. It's not just writing a check, but they're giving their time. And that's what makes this the remarkable community that it is. So I want to recognize the volunteer and the Public Service Month, and hope to see everybody out in the community on April 23rd, and then many times thereafter. Great. Thank you very much. So moving on, we have proclamation presentations. We've got the Livermore Area Youth Advisory Commission annual update. We have Malvika Singhal is here. Malvika? Welcome.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. My name is Malvika Singhal. I am a senior at Granada High, and I currently serve as the Vice President of LIAC. And today I'll be presenting an annual report for the 2015-2016 year. Okay, so duties and responsibilities. To provide a brief summary of our responsibility, we bring together the youth and the adults of Livermore from all walks of life to come together and discuss the concerns of specifically the youth, whether it be educational or health-related, etc. Currently, we are full with the positions provided for the youth, and we have 2 spots open for any adult members who would like to join. And as you know, our terms are 2 years long. So here's a summary of the projects we've done so far. So for the highlights for this year, we are focused on providing service towards reducing the hunger, the amount of hunger in the local area, and possibly providing a presentation on mental health. And both will be one-day events, volunteering. So a new thing we're doing this year is we've provided you with a collection of all the essays that were written and submitted for the essay contest for the 2014-2015 essay contest. So with this, hopefully you can get an idea of what the youth are concerned about regarding like bullying and, education. And here is a compilation of all the flyers from previous essay contests. And that is it. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I would be glad to answer them.
Well, thank you very much. Any questions for the Art Commission? For the LAAC, the Livermore Youth Area Advisory Commission. Any questions? Okay, I saw all the Art Commission people here, so it kind of tipped me off there. So, okay, well, great. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks.
And greatly appreciate the copy of the essays. Look forward to reading that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, we're moving on to the Citizens Forum. This is items that are not on the agenda. The City Council can neither deliberate nor take action on any of these, but we ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. We do have a few cards here. Jim Goff, Dave McGuigan, and Don Meeker. Jim Goff.
Hi, thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak. Simple question. I had a conversation with a friend of mine the other day, and he was talking about Livermore, and they were going to...
good things.
Yeah, I live in Livermore also. They were talking about rent control, and I was wondering if I could come here and just ask, direct, is the city of Livermore working on rent control?
Go ahead, and you should finish your comments, and then we can address that.
That's it.
Okay, that's it?
That's all I want.
Oh, okay. Well, very
And I'm
good.
interested in just
Thanks
watching
a
the rest of the
bunch.
meeting, but I'm just wondering if you guys are working on it, or is it coming, and where could I be if you guys are working on it, through the Planning Commission? Do you guys have advisory groups or anything in?
Okay. All right. Well, I'll
That's it.
refer your comments to staff. So I guess the city attorney would probably be the best person to check in with, perhaps Stephen Kiefer, Community Development. Have we considered?
Yeah, certainly any discussion or any work that the staff would be doing regarding rent control would be initiated through staff or through council policy, and the council has not asked for any work regarding rent control.
Okay. Very good.
Answers my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goff. Dave McGuigan, Don Meeker, Connie Copps.
Dave McGuigan, Ontario Drive. I just have a few questions for the council. Did this council at the last meeting consider an agenda item regarding the new Civic Center meetings hall? That'll be a yes, probably. And was there public discussion of that item? Take this another yes. And did the members of the public in their comments bring up concerns over the downtown hotel? That would be another yes. And during the council discussion, were there about a 2-minute diatribe where lawyer-like questions were asked of the staff to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the council considered it ridiculous for the public to be bringing up downtown hotel concerns while the council is discussing a meeting hall? Let me be honest, I'm trying to be flippant. One of the most common fears in the world is the fear of public speaking. When someone comes before this council to bring their concerns to you, they must overcome that intrinsic fear of making a fool of themselves in public. How do you think those members of the public feel having their concerns ridiculed in a public forum by a leader of the city? How do you think someone who is considering commenting feels about witnessing that ridicule? This council says words that they want people to participate, yet their actions you take give a completely different impression. We've had outrageous claims of spending's required, and now ridicule for not understanding the complexities of how city government operates. I have a more colored version, but considering the audience, let's just remember, we all put our pants on one leg at a time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGuigan. Don Meeker, Connie Copps, Stacy Swanson.
Well, good evening, Honorable Mayor, Council, and staff. In 1976, There were two mini parks dedicated at the intersection of Livermore Avenue and First Street. One was Mill Square Park, in which Livermore and Plaza will be placed, and the other one was Lizzie Fountain. Now, Lizzie Fountain is named after two Lizzies. One is Elizabeth Mendenhall, for whom Lizzie Street was named before it was named Livermore Avenue. The second Lizzie was Lizzie Oliver, a somewhat eccentric lady. Now, Lizzie Oliver was married for the first time when she was 13 years old. She originally hailed from Virginia. Her first husband died after 5 years, and she married again. With her second husband, she had a son, who, as he grew into an adult, spent most of his time in an institution. Now, when Lizzie Oliver came to Livermore, there's a photograph of her that claims that, where she claims that Lizzie Avenue was named after her. Well, it wasn't. And she also claims that she built the first house on Livermore, on Lizzie Street. Well, she didn't. The house that she lived in was built for her by A.J. McLeod, for whom she worked when she was in Centerville. That house remained until about 1920-something, when AT&T bought the property and tore it down. And that's about all I've got to say about Lizzie Oliver. That didn't take as long as I thought it would take. On another matter altogether, since I'm going to be leaving town soon, I would like to make a presentation to our Honorable Mayor. I can't give you the shirt off my back, but I can give you the tie off my neck.
Ah,
This tie depicts clusters of grapes and vines, and I would be most pleased to present it to you. May I approach, or do I give it to
you know
the-
what? Let's suspense that. And I think it's appropriate to note that the maker of the tie is damn crazy. Thank you, Mr. Maker. Connie Copps.
Hi, Connie Copps, 1422 Tulip Way. I'm here for a couple reasons. And again, it revolves and involves Springtown. When I first moved to Springtown, I was told by somebody in my neighborhood that the sale of the golf course was illegal at the time, and that was hearsay. So I've tried to do a lot of homework trying to figure it out. And I did receive like a deed description, but I can't seem to find that it matches the maps in our city. So I really want to, before our city does any more moving forward with any building in Springtown, that they do review the history honestly. I know like the boundaries of Marlin Park are the Marlin Pound Park, which was just in dedication to, I guess it was the man who was at our park district. I'm wondering if that wasn't originally part of the golf course as well, and if it was, how it transferred over. And I like to backtrack because a lot of the meetings that I've gone to that do talk about anything that has been discussed about Springtown in the future, I'm finding really big inconsistencies that to me really seem super wrong, almost criminal, unless I'm looking at this wrong, and I want to give you guys a lot more credit than that. So please clear our minds on that. And lastly, I'd really like to say thank you to your honoring the Boy Scouts. I know of no greater organizations. I feel so bad that I wasn't able to find a troop for my son, you know, when he was young and growing up. Fortunately, his dad really pretty much got about every badge in Boy Scouts growing up, so he was a good role model for him. Let's do more outreach. You know, I swear these kids who go through Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts come out with such good skills, and we really want to spread that. Please check into Springtown. I really want what's right and what's good. And I mean, ever since I mean, you go back prior to 2014, and I really don't think anything that's been said about Springtown has been done honestly and with care, and we deserve that. Thank you.
I would suggest that perhaps you could contact our Community Development Director, Steve Kiefer. He could answer any questions that they might have, because I assure you that everything that Springtown has been done properly and legally.
I don't know why you're saying that when the maps don't match the legal description. Again, there's our records in the county. No, really, I did ask for an appointment with him plenty of times, and I'm just not satisfied with the answers I'm getting. Please, clear my mind.
Thank you. Stacy Swanson, then William Dunlop, Gene King, and Jeff Caskey.
Good evening. Right place?
We
Can you hear me? Good evening. I'm Stacy Swanson, North Livermore Community Alliance. At the special council meeting on December 7th, 2015, regarding the failed Springtown Golf Course, City Council gave Springtown Homeowner Group until March 2016 to show substantial progress on their hastily thrown together plan. This plan was to bring in outside investors to develop a multi-story office building, restaurant, etc., and siphon off the money from these operations to save the golf course. The questions in December were and remain: who are their investors? The HOA members would have to agree to this and rewrite their CC&Rs to allow it. Has this been done? Who would be liable for the ultimate failure of the enterprise? And since the property is zoned open space, just as the golf course property is, have they applied for or gotten rezoning? The larger community does not support rezoning or development of open space. The larger community and many of the Springtown Homeowner Association members I have spoken with do not want a multi-story office building, along with the 1,100 extra car trips that would occur in that intersection if the development went through. The Springtown Homeowners Association and their VC friend have shown no progress in the agreed upon timetable. Council, please put an end to this pointless and wasteful saga that has dragged on since 1967. With always the refrain, we just need a little more time. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Swanson. William Dunlop, Gene King, and Jeff Caskey.
William Dunlop, 2675 St. Helena Court, here in Livermore. And Mayor, council members, nice to be here. At the recent council meeting, you asked me a question for more information regarding Lawrence Livermore Laboratories' need for conference space and hotel rooms. And we're currently working on an update using data from FY 2015, and we expect to receive all the necessary data shortly, but let me go over the results of the analysis for FY 2014. And a few background comments. A summary of hotel use by visitors to Lawrence Livermore Lab is always difficult to get details on. The information usually reflects the attendees at the conference, but the employees of Livermore will usually not stay at the hotel where the conference is held if it's only if it's in the Tri-Valley. If it's outside, like in San Francisco, Monterey, or other places, then the LO and personnel are likely to stay at the conference hotel rather than fighting the traffic to get to and from the conference. The FY 2014 data, we had a pretty good handle on that. There were 30 conferences held off-site. The numbers of attendees at these conferences was between 20 people and 450 people. And you don't have to write. I'm going to give you a copy of this. The conference ranged from 1 day to 10 days in length. 1/3 of the conferences were held in Livermore. These were the smaller conferences, about 20 or so participants. When the conferences were held, and this is especially true for the larger conferences, most of the attendees were not from Livermore. The Livermore attendees at large conferences typically are less than 1/4 of the attendees. And based on the data for off-site conferences, the room nights generated by these conferences was approximately 10,000 room nights. Livermore also holds numerous other meetings, and these are on the lab site. They're often labeled workshops, training sessions. They even call some meetings, actually. It's very hard to get definitive data on these meetings. But most days, when you enter the lab from the west gate, you see one or more signs that direct you to on-site meetings. One might think they could just check with the Livermore badge office and determine the number of outside visitors, but attendees that are from other DOE labs simply show their DOE badge to gain access to Livermore. They don't go through the badge office. We made an estimate based on available data and some knowledge about such meetings, and I actually organized one of those meetings, and I attended a few others, so I had some idea of what goes on at these meetings. The data indicated that between 10,000 and 15,000 room nights were generated by such meetings, workshops, and training that were held on site. Thus, a grand total of room nights expected from visitors to Livermore who could stay in Livermore was approximately 20,000 to 25,000 room nights in FY 2014. We're attempting to get better data for FY 2015 on visits to the lab. We're still in the process of organizing the available data, but we expect to get this data and organize it and provide it. And we'll know better this year what questions to ask in order to get our hands on the data. Visitors to Sandia. Sandia is about 1/10 as large as the Lawrence Livermore site with the number of people involved. So one would expect that their visitors would be approximately an additional 10%. And we don't have any detailed numbers on that. That's just an estimate. I have one other short thing, since this was a response to your earlier question. But on another topic, there was a great suggestion by the LVPAC director, Scott Kennison, on a new idea suggesting that the laboratory and other groups needing large meeting space could use the Bankhead Theater for their keynote speakers or main sessions. In order to make this work, there would need to be some conference center space that could be located near the Bankhead with a passage connecting them. The conference would only need to be about 6,000 square feet in size in order to provide breakout rooms in conjunction with the rooms that are available in the Bankhead. Smaller conferences not requiring the Bankhead could and would be expected to book space regularly, and this conference center could be available at approximately $4 million. So anyway, that's information for you. I will give you a copy of this so you have it, and we will provide you something that was a more up-to-date data for another year, which is 2015.
And just a clarification, so there were 30 conferences with a range of attendees from 35 to 450?
20 people to 450.
450, but some 20 to 450. Okay, great. Thank you very much, Mr. Dunlop. Thank you. Gene King, Jeff Caskey.
Good evening, Council and staff. A disturbing pattern has emerged over the last year. The city has repeatedly and inappropriately blocked testimony that supports a high-quality hotel conference center in downtown Livermore. Instead of the project the community deserves, the city is heading for one that would give us an expanse of condominiums with minor retail from Livermore Avenue to L Street, and a small hotel with rooms looking out at the Bankhead Theater wall. Little public open space has been shown. Citizens should make their voices heard if the city approves an unsatisfactory development in the heart of our downtown. They should referend it. I will give you a brief history of the ways in which the city has stymied efforts to bring the Livermore an inspiring downtown project. Since February a year ago, we have heard consistent reports that the city has directly or indirectly asked community leaders not to speak at council meetings or advise them what they should and should not say. The effect has been to reduce public testimony supporting a project that would meet a broad spectrum of community needs. By decreasing the size of a hotel conference center and moving it to the limited space on the east side of Livermore Avenue, the city opens up more land for massive housing and places it all on the west side of Livermore Avenue. Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory Director Bill Goldstein wrote a letter on July 24th last year to be read at the City Council, supporting the development of a conference lodging facility that could easily handle 200 to 500 guests. We have reason to believe that the city dissuaded the Public Relations Department from doing so. At the last minute, other lab officials were able to overturn the decision, enabling Gene Schuler to read the letter. At a November 9th council meeting, 3 council members said that if a bigger and better proposal were presented, it would be considered even after the city's November cutoff date. Bill Dunlop's community group finished its PKF hotel demand and feasibility study on December 18th. After learning that an upscale, good-sized hotel was feasible, the community group asked for permission to bring it with an applicant with a bigger, better hotel. The city stalled until January 11th to give approval and said that the proposal had to be finalized by January 25th. 2 weeks is not enough time to prepare a competitive proposal. Jeff Caskey will continue the description of the ways the city has stifled the transformative downtown project. Thank you.
Mr. Caskey.
Jeff Caskey, 585 South K Street. Good evening, Council. Several weeks ago, our community group asked a financial consultant to study financing options that would not hurt the city's general fund. The city advised the consultant not to proceed. We understand that additional funding matters because the PKF hotel feasibility study concluded that some assistance is needed for an appropriate hotel to pencil out. By appropriate, we mean upscale with capacity to serve community needs with a range of amenities for residents and visitors and a visually interesting downtown focal point. Since September, the city has been trying to secure an upscale hotel, so far without success. By undermining efforts to study new funding sources, the city again seems to be limiting hotel developers to modest projects. The city did eventually send an email expressing willingness to review our study. However, they did not address the financial consultant's concerns about the city's advice for the consultant not to proceed. As a result, the community group has had to move forward with a new consultant. For some time, we've been providing data through Bruce Cousins to the nationally respected McWhinney Development Group to interest them in the Livermore project. On March 14th, McWhinney told Bruce that they had studied the information and were interested in exploring development of an upscale hotel on Livermore Avenue's west side. They said the east side site is too small. A member of our group informally passed on to the city the exciting news of McWhinney's interest in downtown Livermore. As the liaison to the McWhinney Group, Bruce contacted Brian Steele of Truemark Developers to discuss the proposed upscale hotel. I will read Bruce's statement. On March 16th, Brian Steele told me that city staff had just told Truemark that the hotel will have to be placed on the east side of Livermore Avenue. It will have 80 rooms. There will be no conference center. As a result, Bruce says the McWhinney interest in developing an appropriate upscale hotel is now on hold. The city seems intent on defining the downtown almost entirely with high-density housing from Livermore Avenue to L Street, even after the city council had expressed an interest in accepting a proposal that would be a bigger, more interesting proposal for a downtown hotel. Additionally, by rejecting a conference center able to serve the hotel, laboratories, corporations, cultural groups, and others, looking for an exciting event venue, the city is further disregarding the community's best interests. City staff responds to council leadership. We want the council to make sure the city allows the best projects to move forward. We want to make clear that enough is enough. If inspiring options are not presented to you, the city should start over. If necessary, the project will be referended. I'm deeply concerned about the broken city process. I want to make sure that city decisions are on the up and up. So I'm going to ask, how many people in the audience think that an expansive housing from Livermore Avenue to L Street is unacceptable? All right. And how many people would like to see our downtown include an inspiring focal point and significant open public space? If you agree, thank you. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Caskey. I'm always somewhat taken aback when someone accuses me of conduct that is lacking in integrity. And accusing me of especially disturbing activities, and that I have sought to diminish or limit the comments. And I have done nothing of the kind. I have not, Jeff. What also concerns me is that this has radically changed over the 8 months we've been talking about this, and the study that the ad hoc group promised the city was a study. It was a market feasibility study and market demand and feasibility study for a 12,000 square foot conference center. And the study that was delivered had nothing about the market demand or feasibility of a 12,000 square foot conference center. And that is what the ad hoc committee promised the city. And that is not what they delivered. Instead, they delivered something about a hotel. We had a presentation from Olfert's, and when I asked about the operations and the financing of the 12,000 square foot conference center they promised to deliver, they said, we will work that back to the hotel in some fashion. In some fashion. They had no idea how they were going to fund this, but in some fashion. And they cited that the details were in the PKF study. And when I mentioned to him that when I read the PKF study, there were no details, he admitted that there were none. But yet they cited that in the project that they brought to the city of Livermore, based on the study that you delivered that did not provide the information that you promised. And we agreed that we would consider that, but the study that you delivered was not the one that you promised. So if you say that I'm not being forthright, I would submit that you have deceived the city council as well. So with that, no, thank you. You've had your time. We'll probably talk about this during matters initiated, so hang on for that. Okay, that's all the cards we have for the Citizens Forum. Moving on to the consent calendar. We're going to pull 4.03. That will not be considered tonight. We'll be bringing that back another time. Does anybody wish to pull anything for their comments or for consent calendar? Okay, I do have a card for Connie Copps. This is regarding the lease agreement with iGate on 2nd Street. Ms. Copps.
Connie Copps, Tulip Way. Yeah, I was looking at the lease agreement a little bit on with the city's involvement with iGate, and I was wondering how our city really decides like who it's gonna do public and private partnerships with. I was wondering what the financials were on iGate. How was it successful? I know that our city does profit from iGate, or it does, it's invested in it to reap some benefits, and I don't know if that's been really made clear. How the private partnerships, the private-public partnerships go. Recently, I had a house guest, and all she could tell me is, "I hate corporate America. I hate corporate America," and really, we need to be more open about whenever our city's in a relationship with corporate America. I think we need to fairly display that and show how it was formed and what went into it, because when all is said and done, that's our tax dollars. And I know you guys want to be upfront and forthcoming, but corporate America is corporate America. By the time I was 55, I had about 7 design inventions just pulled from me, because corporate America, you know what? They can do whatever they want. We need to stop that, because, I know our economy is important, and I know the iGate experiment was really brilliant, but, how can we decide whether we should continue with a lease until it's really presented to our public? How can we comment on it before we really know how it works? Where we stand with it as a city, and what its future might bring. I don't know how the other other places like iGate are doing, because I know startup incubators are pretty popular right now. There's a lot of makerspace sort of things going on too, and it'd be interesting to see how the different ones are doing, if they are helping our economy, and if they're not, what could we do to help them? Manufacturing is pretty complex, and I know most people who have given into invention and that, where you run across your biggest obstacles are getting fair legal representation, getting any legal representation, and of course manufacturing is tough because, again, so much is outsourced to China, and I'm not kidding you, anything plastic I've filed with CD cases to file down CD cases to prototype. So before you make any decisions on your involvement with iGate, why don't we display what's going on in a pie chart with it? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Copps. Actually, just really quickly in a nutshell, we have iGate information that's gone out in our city newsletter. We're on the website. Over the last 8 to 10 months, we've spun 6 businesses out of iGate. iGate was created at the bottom of the recession, about 2008, 2009. And the purpose of iGate was to take great ideas, specifically technology coming out of the laboratories, and turn that into businesses. So we've spun out about a half a dozen businesses in the last 8 to 10 months. And those businesses are creating jobs in the Tri-Valley. Those companies have stayed in the Tri-Valley. One has stayed here in Livermore, and they're hiring people, and they're creating jobs, and they're adding to the economy. I believe we've got 20 businesses right now, 20 startups in the iGate makerspace and innovation space. So these are going to become more companies hiring more people, and this is actually pretty cheap property that the city owns. So we already own this property. Ms. Copps.
Just one other question, because the whole thing is about leasing it for free. If it's profitable, why wouldn't you want to generate a rent from it?
Okay, please. So this is not. It's not about the city. We don't make money. That's not our job. Our job is to drive the economy, and what this is doing is creating jobs and driving the economy and taking technologies from our local assets and creating benefit for the community. There's one of the companies that spun out recently using technology from both laboratories that has created a lab in a box that you might have read about this company in the paper. There was a test, a diagnostic test. It's about $2,000 per test. And I read an article in the paper a couple of months ago that this test has now been reduced to a cost of $250. That's a great thing. This lab in a box, which was generated out of iGate, which came out of iGate, supported by the city, they have now have this test down to less than $5 per test. It is going to be a game changer, and that's POC Technologies. And that's a company that grew out of iGate. So we're not in iGate to make money. We're in iGate to create, to help this innovative space to grow businesses, to grow technology, and to create jobs in the Tri-Valley. And we've been very successful. Got that fairly close, Brandon? Okay. All right. All right. Well, so thank you very much. Any discussion on the consent calendar? No?
Move approval.
Okay. Minus 4.03.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Turner, seconded by Vice Mayor Gary. All in favor? Aye. No opposed. We have no public hearings. Matters for consideration. We've got discussion and direction regarding the infrastructure renewal and replacement expenditures. Jeff Schaefer's back, as is Sherry Sheets. Okay, so this is actually the first touch on our asset management plan. We've talked a great deal about that over the last year, and we're going to have a number of touches on that as we go through the process. So this is our first touch on that. So Ms. Sheets, Mr. Schaefer?
Honorable Mayor and Council, I'm Sherry Sheets, your city engineer, and beside me is Jeff Schaefer, your maintenance manager. Tonight we're presenting a report on the infrastructure renewal and replacement budget. This is one of many interim reports that the council will be receiving regarding the asset management program. It is one of the first reports and represents an essential element of developing the asset management program. We need to define what our current practices are in order to understand what we need to do to implement our final asset management program. The city owns and operates about $2 billion, with a B, billion dollars in assets, ranging from streets to landscaping to buildings and pipelines. The city owns both non-enterprise and enterprise-funded assets. Enterprise assets have dedicated revenue streams, usually city user fees, set aside for renewal and replacement. The largest non-enterprise asset is our street pavement system, weighing in at about $500 million. Our largest enterprise asset is the wastewater system, which includes both the water reclamation plant and the sewer collection system. It's also valued at about $500 million. Lots of our assets are not readily apparent to the community, such as our storm drains and water pipes. So the council had asked us to identify what we were currently developing as our renewal and replacement budget. To do that, we went through our capital and operating budget and identified what were expansion and enhancement projects, and we defined those as projects that increase the functionality or capacity of an asset. For instance, we added ultraviolet systems to the wastewater treatment plant, which enabled us to process more effluent, so that was considered an expansion and enhancement. Sometimes we add a lane to a street. That also would be considered an expansion or enhancement because it increases our ability to handle traffic. We then defined renewal and replacement as those things that maintain or extend the life of a system or an asset. An example of that might be an overlay of a street or a replacement of a roof. Some projects are purely renewal and replacement. Others are purely enhancement and expansion, and some are a mixture of both. A pure renewal and replacement would be the street rehab or a sidewalk replacement. A pure enhancement and expansion might be the solar field behind the library or the new Isabel Interchange project. A couple of projects that were mixed purpose were Fire Station number 9, where although we replaced the existing fire station, we also expanded it so it could handle mixed gender use at the station. Or the airport admin building, where we replaced the offices for the airport staff, admin staff, but we also expanded to allow for a restaurant area. Or maybe the LED streetlight program, where we actually replaced not in kind, but with a higher technology that allowed us to reduce our energy consumption. We use lots of different funding sources for our assets. Some sources are flexible and can be used for either enhancement or renewal. Some examples might be gas tax, general fund, Measure B, enterprise user funds. Some sources can only be used for expansion, such as the traffic impact fees or sewer connection fees, and also most grant funds. Still others can be used only for renewal and rehab. That would include things like the refuse vehicle fees. Many funds are also specific to an asset type. For example, the city charges user fees for most of its enterprise funds, including wastewater, water, airport, and golf. Those user fees can only be used to support those specific enterprise assets. Similarly, many non-enterprise assets use fees that can only be used for a specific asset type, such as gas tax and Measure B, which can only be used for transportation purposes. Some of the key factors affecting renewal and replacement are the asset's life cycle, which can be affected by the materials used for the asset and the use itself of the asset. Its replacement value, which needs to adjust for new construction technologies and also for just the general CPI escalation associated with infrastructure costs. And finally, changing business models also affect renewal and replacement, because as society changes, so do our priorities and infrastructure needs. For example, landscaping and irrigation changed from more water-intensive uses to a much more drought-tolerant use, where we automated and sophisticated our sprinkler systems. And perhaps things like sidewalk programs, where we went from a full replacement program to a grinding program for a majority of our fixes. Industry guidelines suggest that approximately 2.5% to 5% of the asset value should be invested in replacement and renewal. That generally corresponds to a life cycle of somewhere between 20 and 40 years. Where there is an existing deficiency, these numbers can increase to as much as 9%. Staff reviewed the city's capital project and operating budget for the recent 5-year period, and based on that period, developed benchmarks by asset type. It is important to note that the replacement investments occur in rather large, discrete increments. So even a 5-year average may be outside the norm for the system. The value of investment ranged from between 0.1% and 5% depending on the asset type. Airport asset investment is the highest, primarily due to the fact that we replaced the admin building and did the main runway rehab during this 5-year period. Like all of life, there's good and there's bad. The good news is there are new dollars keep being provided for expansion. Good news is that we've received new dollars in the form of Measure B, which was an expansion and extension of the existing Measure B sales tax for new transportation, and there are additional transportation funds that the state is considering providing. Also to our benefit is emerging technologies that make it possible for us to replace and renew our infrastructure in a more efficient manner, such as microsurfacing of streets. The bad news is there are new regulations, we oftentimes call them unfunded mandates, that continue to add to the cost of our infrastructure, whether it's new litter control devices for our storm drains, expanding ADA ramp requirements, or new energy code requirements for buildings. All of them add cost for maintaining our assets. And of course, we cannot stop the aging process, which continually erodes away at our infrastructure. The best news, of course, is that we've embarked upon developing an asset management program for our infrastructure. The program will identify what we own and operate. It'll assess the current condition of each of the assets. It'll also identify what our current level of service policies are and whether or not they're sustainable. It'll consider current and anticipated regulatory requirements and how that affects our assets. It'll review what technologies and procedures we use for renewal and replacement. It will also identify what funding sources we use and what is needed. In the end, we will have a program that balances resources, assets, ownership, and level of service policies so that we can reliably sustain our infrastructure. Tonight, we are presenting our initial findings on renewal and replacement funding. We are recommending that City Council direct staff to include information regarding the projects and amount budgeted for R&R in future budget documents. We are still in the early stages of developing our asset management program. Later this spring, we will be bringing forward the pavement management program. In the summer, Council will be asked to appoint members to the Community Asset Management Program Committee. Over the next 18 months, the city will bring additional information forward on the various assets and elements of the program. That concludes our presentation. We're available for questions.
Thank you. Questions for staff? Councilmember Warner?
I've got more along the lines of suggestions, more than questions. So I think this is a very useful first step, as you said, and really appreciate you starting down this path, because what we're trying to do is get actionable information so that we can make the right decisions. So I think this begins that process. So some of the suggestions that I've got, and I'm looking at the staff report, is that, as you point out, we've got the non-enterprise and enterprise assets. And really, those are separate pots of money, generally. And you could move, I guess, general fund money to enterprise, but you can't go the other way.
Right.
So these are two separate problems. So that I suggest that the charts and everything that we put together really bifurcate that. And that we look at not only the assets that we've got, but what the funding sources are. Because the charts that we have here are kind of commingled, and it's a little hard to tease it out. So that was the one thing. So make sure that the discussion, I think, going forward is non-enterprise and enterprise. You've got it. I like the way you've got the expansion versus the renewal and replacement, and also, as you pointed out, some funds can go for one category and not the other. So really, by parsing this, we can figure out what the magnitude of our problem is. And then I noticed that we have going here replacement value, which is today's dollar, versus asset value, which is the depreciated value, and the rules of thumb in there. And just want to make sure that we are facile in moving back and forth between the two if we have to use two, just so we're clear as to which one we're going with. So those are, I think with those suggestions, it would be helpful for me to kind of understand it in more detail. And the other preliminary conclusion I've got, and I'll test this with you guys, is that based on the currently available information, and I know what we're embarking upon here is the process to really get it more detailed, figured out, but that even if the states and feds help us with the roads, and I think it's acknowledged just generally that there's a gap there and that there has to be additional revenue to handle the roads. But for sure at the moment, we can't solve our road problem with all the available money we've got at the moment, is what I would say. But or can we? I guess.
No, I think that's a correct statement, that given the current funding sources available and even the projected ones from the state for our roads, that we can't solve our renewal and replacement program for all of our assets, over all of our assets.
Well, but what I'm thinking is that we don't have enough to actually just make the roads good enough, and then even if we let everything else fall apart, that we'd still have the roads deteriorating.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's my first point, is we can't, under the current funding sources, maintain our roads adequately, even if we let everything else fall apart. And the second kind of conclusion that I'm getting from this data is that even if we did get some kind of help from the state or federal government, we still have on all the other assets a significant funding shortfall to be able to maintain them at a to be determined adequate level.
That's true.
Okay. So I think that's very important for everybody to understand that, and we'll get the details and we'll quantify it, but the overall conclusions that I just stated will not be different when this is all said and done.
I think we're hoping to be able to contain or manage the amount through this process. So, but you're correct in that there's likely a shortfall. There's a big shortfall now. It's not going to disappear.
Yeah, and I think, in one place I've been is that, I've often, whenever, in my other life, and I'm saying I hope that this will work, I'm always told that hope's not a strategy. So I know we like to hope, but I'm saying, I'm just trying to be straight up that we have a problem here, and we don't have it exactly quantified, but there is no, through, I think it was stated earlier, there's no policy decision we can make to solve this, absent because of the revenue shortfall. We can't manage our way out of this.
On that happy note, Vice Mayor?
It's just, looking at what it says.
I know Councilmember Werner's intent. I'll go backwards, starting with his last comment, just a minor wording semantic. no community, no state, no county in America has the funding to totally replace 100 to 200 years of infrastructure. It just doesn't exist. What we need to do is manage our way through the woods with selective prioritization of the needs. So my feedback tonight was to support staff's recommendation. I think you for the first time actually have begun the process of splitting the capital improvement project budget into expansion and enhancement and replacement. And I think that's marvelous. After all the years in government, for the audience, most capital improvement budgets are a companion to the general fund budget, and the CIP budget's another 500 or 800 pages. And you really can't tell what it is unless you're an expert in one of dozens to hundreds of projects. So I think if you can start to tab and quantify the discussion into we're doing this much expansion and enhancement because pressure on services is modifying our needs in the near term, and we're slowly chipping away at a prioritized sense at renewal of aging infrastructure. Third, I think you help future councils prioritize the dollars between those two competing needs. I want it next year versus I want to fix something, pick a number, 50 years old, by letting the council know some of the stuff you'd like to fix before it fails, some of it you're going to let it fail and then fix it. And some of the fixes before it fails, the council may have to understand if you don't fix something soon, if that node on the system fails, you've knocked out sewer capacity to half the town, for the sake of discussion. You can't have the renewed library next year because the sewer interceptor at Acme intersection now is about to fail. So I think you help us move the funding between the two competing needs in the 5-year CIP by having that in-depth conversation with us. We've got to renew, we've got to replace and maintain, and help us move the dollars back and forth, because it's going to be contentious in a polite sense. There's never enough dollars to ever catch the infrastructure up. So I like staff's recommendations. I like where you're going with the CIP. And for example, when you come back this year with, for example, the pavement management update, you'll be able to start that community conversation with. And this is, et cetera, part of the CIP, not just we're spending money because we want to spend money. Thank you.
If I could just say, I completely agree. I mean, we're into trying to figure out and move things back and forth. Bottom line, though, as you pointed out, for no city does it have the ability to fund this. I think what's good about what we've started here is that we're really being really upfront and clear, rather than kind of hiding it a little bit, and that one of the things that we're trying to do here is really make sure we understand the financial strength of the city. And we've done the thing with the, we've got good union agreements now. We've got the unfunded OPEB under control. So this is the last piece that really gets out in front, and that's why we're going into this kind of detail. And the point is, we just can't have any illusions that this is somehow magically going to happen, and that we will be forced at some points to make tough choices. And ultimately, those tough choices will be between assets, but we'll also have to say, we either have to find new revenue somehow, or the quality of these assets is going to deteriorate. I mean, we are not going to escape that reality.
Very good. Councilor Turner?
Sure, you have cards, right?
Pardon?
Yeah, I didn't know if I wanted to go before or after the cards. That's all.
Oh, well, these are just questions. If you have questions for
Just
staff.
a quick, your recommendation, is that you're expecting us to give you a recommendation tonight, or you're looking for recommendations in our future budgeting process once we have the full?
So we're asking you tonight to direct staff to include this kind of information in all future budgets. So that's all we're really asking from you for tonight.
Okay, so you're not asking us to determine the percentage that should go or any of that stuff, because I'm not ready to do that.
Yeah.
I think it's clear that our percentage needs to change, but we need that in the full. Okay, so because when you said that, I'm just like, okay. Just wanted to make sure. And I agree with my peers. I really do quite like that they're now being split out, and we can, no wonder we've got sidewalks that people trip on, because we need to fund the sidewalks a little bit better, and we know that. And so I'm very pleased with what I see so far, and I agree with what the gentlemen say. And obviously, we can't replace everything today, but having the plan to fail and all those listings so that we can really come up with a comprehensive plan to tackle all this and then determine the appropriate funding level, I think that you guys are right on with where I expected us to be. And that's all the direction I have.
I got one simple question. You had airport quantity LS, slide 4.
Sorry, LS is lump sum. I don't know how else to explain.
Quantity, I'm thinking LS. Okay, maybe it's Roman numerals, but not quite. Okay, very good. I have 2 cards, Connie Copps and Dave McGuigan. Yeah, here you go.
Connie Copps, Tulip Way. I just had an idea while I was sitting there when you were talking about the tripping sidewalks, because on my street I have 2 areas. I've tripped twice on one side, and the other one I just don't walk there. Probably would have tripped there too. But I was thinking maybe if you could get together with the Boy Scouts, the Eagle Scouts, and see maybe for a badge opportunity with our older scouts, if they could be trained to use a grinder. I think that if you went through like OSHA and got it approved, where maybe they could put on some safety glasses and help us out and get an Eagle badge by, using that resource. And I agree that in the future, you probably have to try to find different sources of revenue to keep those, things going. Another thing you might want to look at is bringing back some kind of property tax that's not Melrose, something that's not going to pay for flowers, but is going to pay for education. Prop 13, I know I'm going to get beat up somewhere tomorrow for bringing this up, but we have to care about our kids. We have to care about what's going on around us. Even if we want them to move somewhere else, we need to educate our children, and we need to feel happy doing it. Whether you have children or not, you live in Livermore. Look back when we're old, who's going to take care of us? We need to respect these kids and what they're capable of and give them the chance to make a living here, whatever. I know it's complex. But the other thing is, looking at pie charts, I think Livermore really needs to get away from these charts. I don't know if they're Excel or what, but, the golf thing, for instance, you see on those, on the pie charts in that report that the golf is enterprise together. The 2 golf courses, Springtown and Las Positas, are grouped together as an enterprise fund. You would not believe how many times I was told those 2 were separate accounts. They didn't have anything to do with each other. So we just can't do that, when it's convenient. Again, a full meeting should be devoted to what your assets are, what your boundaries are, who your partners are with your assets before you make any kind of decisions, because it's really wrong if you do certain things behind closed doors and we're not putting the facts on the table. I think you're going to find that things will fall into place for Livermore if you do put the facts out on the table and if you do look at things realistically. Again, with Springtown, all the surrounding properties, it's really vague on, what happened with that, because that golf course was originally 18 holes, down to 9, sold 9. The legal description of a lot of the property in Livermore is not matching the map. So start with the truth, and I think it'll really help a lot. Thanks.
Thank you. David McGuigan.
Hi, Dave McGuigan, Ontario Drive. Pulling some of these comments from the document that was on the web, so I'm going to pull this all together. But if I understand it, we have about $1.45 billion in non-enterprise infrastructure and about $935 million in enterprise infrastructure, like $2.4 billion in infrastructure assets today. And we should be programming 2.5 to 5% annually for rehabilitation and replacement R&R. So that would give us somewhere in the $60 to $120 million a year today for R&R, which we certainly aren't making. We've only gotten about $18.2 million over the last 5 years. And so that would lead to the conclusion that we're maybe somehow, in some sense, generating a $40 million a year hole over the last 5 years that needs to be dealt with in some sense in the future. And that would also mean that we're maybe in a deferred maintenance mode in some respects. So maybe we should be thinking about 72 to 216 million, the 3 to 9% numbers that they were referring to in the document. Now going forward, where it's referenced that there's 1.3 billion in R&R expenses over the next 20 years, which gives us an average of 65 million a year for R&R going forward. First, it seems the 65 number seems a little low since we are running pretty lean right now for the last 5 years. And also, when we consider that the asset management plan survey is completed, we certainly should reasonably expect to have some additional needs identified and incorporated into the plan. Second, I'm concerned with just what it means to say we have to identify additional sources for funding. If 45% of the funding for the last 5 years came from special sources, Measure B and other things that we can't necessarily guarantee going forward, we're really kind of already down to like 9 million a year in R&R, and so, or 16% to the 60 million. So even if we consider that, we spent 243 million or 49 a year over both the expansion and enhancement and R&R expenses, giving us 49 million a year, we're still 16 million a year short from the 65 million we're projecting going forward. I guess my concern is we seem to be building things, but we can't afford to maintain what we already have. I'd like to hear how the council is going to close this budget gap. I hate to think that we'll have some future meeting where somebody holds up $460 saying this is what the sales tax is going to cost each of the 87,000 residents of Livermore to pay the $40 million budget shortfall for R&R budget. Could happen. We've seen it happen before. I also found that the 2015 and 17 CIP project on the web, but I couldn't find the entire 20-year plan. I'd like to see that get put on the web so we can start taking a look at what that really entails. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGuigan. That's the cards I've got. Oh, we have another card? Okay, could you please give that to the city clerk? Is it for you? Okay, Sally Dunlop, Ms. Dunlop, please.
Yes, I just have a question speaking about all of the recommendations for the city. And this may not have anything to do with this. I think it does because it comes under the budget. But we live in a South Livermore plan that Oakville Lane meets Vasco Boulevard. And when they were slurry coating all the streets this summer, Vasco and all in there, there's actually a bike and a walking trail that parallels Vasco Avenue. And they didn't put the white lines for people to cross there. They did across Vasco to get from back and forth, but there isn't one going from one side of the walking trail to the other side. It would really be nice, because sometimes I don't see that and I forget, and I go, oh yeah, I'm supposed to look both ways. So it'd be nice. I don't think that would be too awfully expensive to put 2 white lines there. Anyway,
Great.
that's what I was wanting to say.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention, and I see that Mr. Schaefer has made a note of that, so I'm sure that's going to get done pretty quickly. So thank you. Okay, so we've gotten several comments already. This is the last of the cards. Any additional comments? I agree with my peers also. Having come from a simpler world, the water industry, renewal and replacement was extremely important. And of course, we had a single source, and that was the water rates. Expansions were done by connection fees, and replacement was done by water rates. This is a lot more complex. I agree with Mr. McGuigan. we have a large unfunded need, and unfortunately, we can't just presume that somebody else is going to build our water treatment plant. So that's where this asset management plan comes in. And as I said, this is our first touch at the asset management plan. As my vice mayor pointed out, you got to find that balance between where you're maintaining things, basically, for example, maintaining the cost of a car versus having the car quit on you when you're in the middle of Death Valley. So these catastrophic failures versus maintaining the asset through its usable life. And this is one of the reasons we got the asset management plan, is to find out what that optimal life is so that we can stretch out the capital dollars as well as the dollars to maintain these assets. So again, I think this is a great way that you've presented this, dividing the different type of assets. So I certainly appreciate that, and would agree with my peers as well. So I look forward to this continuing to develop as we move ahead throughout the process, and look for more information. Is that sufficient direction? Okay, great. Keep up the great work, and make those assets last as long as we can.
Mr. Mean, Council is showing consensus here on this item and not taking formal action.
You're not seeking formal action, or you are?
Well, we are. We just want to make sure we have consensus from everyone.
I think I saw 4 nodding heads. Yes.
Thank you.
So you have consensus. Thank you. And thank you, Troop 931. Okay. All right. Moving on to 701. This is matters initiated and council committee reports. Councilmember Turner.
Just a few things to report. On March 21st, I attended with everybody up here the installation of the new board of directors for Livermore Downtown Inc. Great event. I really appreciated how they gave us the whole history of the downtown. I wonder if we could get that movie and put it on our website, because it's really cool. So if you could look into that, that'd be great. Just because we should be sharing that, I think, with the whole community and seeing where it's been and where it's going. I think it's fantastic. And then on this March 22nd, I had a meeting at Stop Waste, and we're continuing to work on plastic bags and moving forward with banning plastic bags in restaurants and other retail stores, so not just food stores. So that will be voted on in the fall, but working on draft language and all that. And next, at our next meeting, which is one of my passionate issues with Stop Waste, is they're considering getting rid of the benchmark fee. The benchmark fee is a fee that got attached to your trash last year. I think it's $2.54 or something like that. It's not a lot, but the purpose for it was to give a flyer on recycling in the community. And I have a hard time charging taxpayers $2.50 to get more mail from an organization called Stop Waste. So I believe staff is going to recommend that we get rid of the benchmarking fee program. And so more on that next month. And also, I believe we'll get a report in the next couple meetings about the Energy Council that we opted out of. The Energy Council through Stop Waste is now looking at a regional connection and trying to consolidate energy-focused entities. And so I think it might be a really good time to revisit it. And I believe the city manager will be bringing that back for the council to consider.
Okay.
On the 23rd, I attended the League of California Cities event as well, the East Bay Division monthly meeting, where we had a legislators forum, candidates forum for all the open seats in the area that are that don't have incumbents, and so heard, I think, about 18 different speakers. So that was interesting. And just one kind of sort of matter to be initiated, but really just a question. I believe sometime in the summer, we voted on and agreed to do a study of the area on First Street, like from the casino to Trevarno Road. And do we have any idea when that's going to come back to us?
I would say probably June.
Okay. So it is progressing?
Yes, it is.
Okay. At the rapid speed of government. Fabulous. Thank you. And that's all I have.
Okay, very good. Councilmember Warner?
A couple of things. I also attended the March 21 board installation for Livermore Downtown Inc. And I thought it was very impressive because they had a 30-year retrospective of all of the progress, and they've been very instrumental in doing it. So they're doing a great job, and looking forward to them continuing. And then the other thing I attended on March 17th was the Intergovernmental Committee meeting, and there are a few things that may be of interest more generally out of that. One is discussion of getting a drone policy going. Where can people fly drones was one question, so that's going to be looked at. I brought up, I'm concerned about all the trees that have died in the drought and to what extent they're a fire hazard, and so then the three intergovernmental agencies agreed to look into what it would, what's the policy, and lead by example, not get into the private situation, but just show what good management looks like, and to inform the public of what's going on, because there are a lot of things that have to be cut down and maybe replaced with something else. We also heard from the school board as to all the compelling needs to support their new bond measure. So that's it.
All right. Vice Mayor Gary?
Ditto, those two reports, the LDI annual board reorganization meeting, and they also held a very successful half marathon fundraiser, and just remind the community how fortunate we are to have a downtown association who really acts as the hub of so many interesting and attractive opportunities in the downtown and beyond for our community. Also, at the Intergovernmental Board meeting that I'm on with Councilmember Werner, we also discussed the incipient master planning for the Springtown Golf Course. Pending final council decision, one of two matters initiated, I'd ask, well, really, this is a matter initiated, ask staff, is just to, I think we're all interested, if I see three other head nods in a moment, to bring the matter back before us. The citizens ad hoc group up there, the Springtown Homeowners Association, either has a fleshed out proposal by now or they don't, and if they don't, let's agendize the conversation and keep moving on the planning process. We're in limbo long enough out there, just if my peers agree to. Let's do it.
What do you think?
Let's get it. Let's move on. I mean, we're
that item's coming before you. It's coming before you April 11th. So we'll have an update.
I was pushing for that as well at the thing, and that we gave a very generous deadline, and it was only for a preliminary comeback, and we don't even have that, so it's time to move on.
My other request of one or all the four of us here tonight, if it's the pleasure of the other three, is just to remind staff on the downtown issues that we do have groups who want to advocate for their position, and that's great. That's the American way, is to advocate for what you'd like to see. When the staff, my request to staff is when the report comes back, please be as transparent and as comprehensive as you need to be on all the communications with all the interest groups, the things you've said yes or no to, given direction from this council, from the prior public hearings and public votes, and just be consistent in advising us in the community on what's transpired since the last council meeting. And with that, we'll do what we always do, which is take the public testimony and make a decision. But I just thought that maybe the best course of action, we obviously can't respond meeting to meeting to ongoing non-agendized dialogue, is just to encourage and remind staff. If it ends up being a 50-page report, it's a 50-page report, but be transparent and fully communicative on what's been going on in between council meetings. Thank you.
Do we have consensus on that one? I think that I see four heads nodding. Yeah. Very good.
I have one question, if I may. Thinking about some of the public comment we heard, I don't recall us having made a decision as to where a hotel has to be located and the size. And so as far as I know, that's still to be decided. And the stage that we're at now is choosing which developer we want to partner with. And we're just looking at preliminary proposals, but no final decisions have been made one way or another, as far as I know.
That is accurate.
Well, and the ones that we saw was the developers that made the placement of the different assets on the site. That we didn't set that up.
Right, and those were at this stage merely suggestions. They're not decisions.
Okay. Very good. Anything else? All right. Moving on to, let's see. On the 16th of March was the Rotary Youth in Government Day, which was a lot of fun. It was right here. The city clerk actually got to run a mock city council meeting, and those are always a lot of fun to see just how those come together. And it's interesting to get the young people in the community involved in just how government works, or doesn't, as the case may be. But it's nonetheless, it's very interesting. On the 22nd, again, there was the Livermore Downtown Inc. They showed photographs of what some of us looked like 30 years ago and what 30 years has done to us. One I thought was kind of cute. It had a picture of her parents. She wasn't around yet, so I thought that was good. Also, the 22nd, I did the History of Livermore for the Key to the City program. That was a lot of fun, talking about this. The Key to the City is a great program. You get an idea of just how the city operates, all the different departments. We have the Citizens Police Academy, which is a lot of fun, but that's more focused just on the police department. But you do get out to go to the range, so that's always a lot of fun. And everybody's favorite day is Range Day. But the Key to the City is a much broader view of everything that happens, all the different departments. So it's really a lot of fun. And so I got to do the history talk on that. The 24th, I was at the Alameda County Transportation Commission meeting, which was the, let's see, we talked about, let me get my notes on that. We got a legislative update on different federal and state transportation issues that may be coming up. We voted on the Comprehensive Investment Plan, Programming Allocation Principles and Assumptions, and also the State Transportation, the STIP program update, which is different state funding for transportation projects. Also, LAFCO, where we got an update on the Fairview Fire Protection District and issues relating to the Mount Eden Healthcare District. Finally, as the Vice Mayor pointed out, the half marathon, 4,500 people in the downtown, 50% growth over last year. I believe 65% of them were women. And from last year, it was 35 different states. So it's grown by 50%, and this is one of the most beautiful runs around. So this is why people love to come into downtown to finish out the race. Not only because we've got 13 wineries and one brewery, but just because of the amazing downtown that we have as well. So another great event. And with that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting to April 11th. Thank you very much.